Hey all, we are back to talk about stress states, and before we get started, I want you to pull out a piece of paper because you will be tracking your own personal regulation profile today. And if you are a parent, you can track your kids as well. Space to jot down things that you're learning, insights that pop up, and really connecting with yourself and what's coming up for you throughout this. This is in a ladder formation. So some of the information that I'm pulling in today is rooted in the polyvagal theory. And that is a theory that uses a ladder or hierarchy to look at how our nervous system functions. Just another visual to pull from as we are talking today. I've labeled these animals because a lot of my background is working with kids and families and helping to understand how this looks, how this works. This is a video I hope you can come back to again and again because the information is totally game changing and will benefit you and understanding people around you, understanding yourself time and time again. And it's such a compassionate view. So soak it in. It will save you a lot of time if you are aware of this, and energy, save a lot of time and energy for sure. And get comfortable as we get moving through the stress states today. Number one is the top of our ladder, which I call the dandy dolphin state. Dandy dolphin was designed because when we are in the state, we tend to be secure, social, and be able to access our playfulness, our authentic self in the best parts of who we are, and be able to be social and interactive with people around us. So dandy dolphin state for you may look like if you go to get a coffee or you're at the grocery store, you feel like engaging with that person that is in front of you. You feel generally pretty good, pretty resourced. Or if you do feel stressed, you trust that other people will listen, support, that you have people to go to. So a big factor of this state that I look at as a nervous system based, trauma based occupational therapist and coach is that we are regulating through relationship more often than not. Meaning, if we have joy, something that we're excited about, something that we're sharing. And I love the dolphin visual for this because dolphins are so social, so playful, so engaged, and so involved in their community, in that ingrained dynamic of the community, that you want to share it with the people that are close to you. You trust that that joy or that ease will increase when you do share it. This state is when our nervous system is in what's called a ventral vagal state. So we can access our resources of our regulated window of tolerance. We physiologically feel more embodied, more secure. Such a great way to be. And if you haven't been in environments where that is the norm, of course you would default to a different state. And we'll talk about that now. As I bring attention to it, I even have a shift in my own body where I recognize, oh, I had a little bit of tense energy in there somewhere where I was bracing, and I don't have much time to do this video today, so I'm trying to get it done and move forward. And I sense that my neck, my shoulders, my body starts to tense or to brace. So this is what might pop the nervous system down into a sympathetic state, which I will call controlling cat. Controlling cat is when we have what is called a fight response kick in. So this can look outwardly like hitting, kicking, biting, in distress in some way, trying to protect in that threat energy that comes up. So the sympathetic nervous system has detected some sort of threat, which for me in this example, it could be time urgency. Time urgency is such a big threat to the nervous system, or time scarcity. So when we become aware of it, we have the opportunity to help our nervous system move back up the ladder to that dandy dolphin state where we all want to live in that harmonious, melodic, playful, authentic space. Yeah, when our controlling cat energy kicks in, this looks like, I think about a cat that is kind of hypervigilant, defensive. Controlling is a big one that comes up in this state. So we tend to have difficulty going with the flow. It feels like we need to control, 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 resist, 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 defend, deflect, fight. If somebody at the store or at that coffee shop or the cashier says something to us, we might have a defensive response or a sense of protection that pops up where our nervous system says, I don't have time to engage with this person. I don't have time to be social. When we have that controlling cat kick on, it tells us that we're beginning to drop down into what's called a sympathetic state. Fight energy kicks on. This is rooted in our physiology when we were running from a threat, predator. So you imagine running from a tiger, and we initially might start to fight the tiger. We might want to hit, use a weapon, something that will defend ourselves against that tiger. So our whole physiology orients around being able to detect this threat and fight it off. When that doesn't work, we may pop down into a flight reaction, a flight response. This is what I call a busy badger response. The busy badger is that same kind of sympathetic energy cooking underneath the surface, but it really looks more like we are fleeing from something. So our physiology, the stress hormones are kicking on, and they are saying, get away from this threat. Avoid, avoid, avoid. But when we start to realize, okay, fighting is not working, we need to flee. So our physiology goes into that sympathetic state and pumps up some stress hormones that say, avoid this threat, get away from this threat. The stress hormones are saying our physiology needs to orient around getting away from this threat. We don't need to put resources into relationships and bonding and cultivating time, space with others. We just need to survive and avoid. For adults, this can look all kinds of different ways. This can look like overthinking to avoid being with a feeling that feels so threatening. So many emotions, many sensations for kids and adults can feel threatening because there often hasn't been space for co-regulation. Oh dear, I just realized I didn't have my microphone on, so we'll see if this is charged up today. Well, hopefully the sound quality will be better from here. Microphone is on. No dogs chewing it today, biting it. So far, so good. When we drop down into busy badger state, it can look like overthinking, intrusive thoughts. So some of those obsessive thoughts that can come up, those thoughts on repeat, ruminating. It can even look like procrastinating. Procrastinating is often avoiding the feeling that you have when you do something, or difficulty regulating through the feeling of anticipation of it. So it isn't so much the doing it that is challenging, it's that the nervous system is having trouble initiating or moving through that threat feeling of getting started, getting it initiated, which can be a big jump because our nervous system wants to go down familiar pathways. So if you've been a procrastinator or if you have a history of that, then your nervous system may want to default to that because maybe it was protective in the past. So what does that look like for you? What does your busy badger state look like? Your flight response or your flight tendencies. So it isn't always this huge reaction, but it's something slightly reactive, slightly impulsive, where suddenly I'm constricting, which is more reactionary, protecting, instead of this open, expanded, spacious, open heart space where I want to be. Maybe there have been ways that you have avoided or wanted to stay small to fit in with the people around you. Maybe there is something there cooking like shame, not being good enough if you do it. There can be a lot of emotions, and shame is a really physiological one. If we haven't had co-regulation through our emotion, through our sensations that come up, then it is very likely that when an emotion comes up like shame, which is a big sensation in the body, it's a very visceral emotion, then you may drop into a sympathetic state and go into more of a survival protect state because you haven't had that regulation through relationship that tells the nervous system that you are secure to feel that. So the idea behind this is knowing yourself. So as you're writing on that paper, tracking, what does it look like when I am in my own individual dandy dolphin state? Everybody's dandy dolphin, secure, safe social state will look different. So when you know your own, you can start to recognize what it looks like when you are not in that state. What does it look like when you drop into that controlling cat? When you're resisting, defensive, controlling? What does that look like? For me, that might pop up as irritability, wanting to control my husband or say how we should be doing something differently or better. When I drop into that busy badger state, it can look like almost like a crispy feeling or a disembodiment feeling of being detached from myself. Then I can regulate my body, regulate some of that sensation that's coming up. For me, this often looks like a softening. So I may focus on the back of my neck, the back of my shoulders, and almost imagine like a release or an exhale. We could even do that together right now. As you're listening, as you're watching, just bring attention to the back of your neck, the back of your shoulders. Allow the breath to come up with ease, however it comes up for you, nothing forced. And notice what happens to your state from a sensory level, from an emotional level. Maybe it stays the same, and that's okay. We're noticing, we're acknowledging, we're bringing awareness to it. Because this practice has been part of what I'm working on and part of what I've done, already I can feel my nervous system start to adjust and to feel more secure. So to feel like I'm moving up that ladder into that secure, safe social area where my breath starts to come easier, more naturally. I'm not as constricted and holding. There's more spaciousness, there's more expansion there. And what happens if we are not effective with our fighting or our fleeing? So physiologically, let's say we're fighting the tiger, doesn't work. Running from the tiger, doesn't work. Then we may pretend to play dead. So this state is what I will call tender turtle. I almost called it terrified turtle because this state involves a lot of fear. However, it's more internalized. It's less easy to see from the outside because somebody might not be running away or attacking to protect themselves. Instead, it's this inward, more internal sense of numbness, sense of dread. So I think about a turtle that is very tender and vulnerable on the inside, but there's this hard shell outside. But on the inside, you may feel really heavy, slow, attached, numb. Just feels overall like almost more of a depression might come to mind with this state. Apathetic, there's no purpose, none of this even matters. That overall sense of dread, sense of heaviness. This state is super energetically demanding. So even though fight and flight are more outward expressive, you have all of that energy pumping through you, but there's nowhere to go with it. And a big element of this from a nervous system regulation standpoint is that you feel alone. There's an aloneness quality to it. So instead of feeling secure enough to go to the people around you, maybe that hasn't been helpful, and you've developed a pattern of keeping things more inward. So I call it a tender turtle because it's often a very tender state, even though, again, it doesn't always appear from the outside. There's another state that we could call flop that I will not be going into, but we will go into something that is very aligned with the last couple of videos, which is the flattering fawn state. Flattering fawn is when we almost tend and befriend, Pete Walker calls it, the threat around us. It may look like we decide that we can get to know the threat or adapt to the threat, adapt to that person in a way that keeps us safe. So as kids, you may identify this if you grew up with emotionally immature parents, caregivers, and had to manage their emotions. So we've talked about this in the last couple videos a bit with how you can self-abandon your own needs, your own wants, your own desires, your own truth, your emotions, in order to stay safe in an environment that may actually be threatening to share your emotions. We learned that when you are sad, if we're in the dandy dolphin state, we can feel sad, we can feel stress, absolutely. And we feel secure to go to the people around us. Well, if the people around us are not offering space for that security, so for stress to ease, for that spaciousness, they can feel secure in their own bodies while you're experiencing your emotion. They can feel their own emotion and feel secure. That is how we move up the ladder. We regulate through relationship, and it's almost like they're pulling us up, grabbing a hand and pulling us up the ladder simply by embodying their own emotion or being with their own emotion, feeling secure with that emotion through it, enough for your nervous system to say, hey, I feel a sense of ease and security in this moment. It can also look like adults who are doing something like body co-regulation or using the space, adapting in some way, and we'll talk about that. Let me know if you're interested. But for today, I think about regulating through relationship as simply going to somebody who has done this practice themselves or can be secure enough with emotion not to detach from it, from a cold kind of avoidant space, or to join it from that kind of anxious enmeshed space, but can be with their own emotion while also being and understanding and getting curious about your own. When this doesn't happen, we may go into a fawn state because it is a genius, beautiful protective mechanism. For kids who grow up with emotionally immature parents or caregivers especially, which is many parents and caregivers of those past generations have not had the opportunity for co-regulation because nobody knew what any of this was. I see it as a combo of the above states, and our nervous system is essentially saying, okay, it isn't safe to fully be in this moment, but I can adapt, I can shapeshift, I can be like a chameleon and be that flattering fawn where I may people please or show up the way that I need to get approval in order to stay safe. So what does this look like for you? What does it look like when you pop into a flattering fawn tendency? And for me, I notice this so consistently or so often where I realize, wow, am I really being or behaving in a way that is modeling this psychological rest, security, that dolphin state? Or am I a little bit on edge, bracing, and shape-shifting to be who I think these other people or this environment needs me to be? Back to that practice of nervous system regulation. I'm doing this throughout the day, and a big part of what I do is pulling in work with higher power, as we say in recovery, which for me I call God, and practicing in a way that is accessing this ultimate co-regulator and not going to just total self-sufficiency and putting more demands on ourselves to regulate ourselves, because that can be such a shame, guilt spiral that isn't helpful either. Essentially, with a fawn state, we have no boundaries. We are almost like our container of ourselves has energy going all around versus back with yourself. So another practice that I think can be helpful as we're learning to regulate through relationship is bringing that attention, that awareness, that energy back to yourself. We talked about this in the last video. Review that if you're wondering more about that, and really keeping track of your behaviors when you begin to pop into these stress states. So that is it for today. We went through the stress states and some ways that they can look. We went through ways to regulate through relationship, ways to regulate yourself, to climb up that ladder, because we will fluctuate up and down through this all day long. As humans, we are moving through a lot and navigating a lot, and it is a practice that brings so much liberation and agency and power. One thing I will say is that often when I see people access their anger in that controlling cat state, sometimes it is such a sign of growth and healing, which anger can be really demonized in our world. But as a nervous system trained occupational therapist, I see it as such a sign of progress for so many that have been in that more shut down, fawn state. The bottom lower ladder areas, and see it as almost like we're ascending the ladder into agency, into your own authentic power, and ultimately in secure social dandy dolphin as a result. And that is all for today. Keep this list in your personal regulation profile in front of you to adapt, update, and get to know yourself, build that self-awareness, that meaningful sense of your story, your narrative. That is one of the biggest gifts that we have, to be in relationships with others, to access our purpose, and ultimately to regulate through the day. I will see you next time.